Hi there everyone, I'm Josiah from Womp Creations, and today we're going to be talking about Greeblies. Now, I told you that for the next couple weeks or so, there's not going to be any build videos on Fridays, and that is because we are currently, I know that right now you're seeing me in my old shop, but I am currently moving into my new shop. That's right, we are dealing with some time travel here. But because of that, I don't have time or the resources to go into another real build. So, I told you guys you're going to be getting something completely different, and so now it's time for something completely different. So today we're going to be talking about Greeblies, and I've gotten a couple questions really ever since I started Womp and started putting pictures of my stuff out before I was doing videos or anything like that about what Greeblies are, where can you find them. I do want to say right away, the Smuggler's Room has a fantastic video on Greeblies, fantastic Greeblies and where to find them, and I will say I am incredibly jealous of that title. It's very creative, good for you guys. No, it's a great video. I will have it up here. Make sure you guys go and watch it. I'm going to be talking about where I get my Greeblies and what I end up using a lot of the time for Greeblies, some of my favorite Greeblies. First off, what are Greeblies? You might have heard it referred to as greebles, the knurlies. There's all kinds of different names for it. I say Greeblies because that's how I say it. That's about it. But Greeblies are essentially anything that you can repurpose from something else or even build yourself to add detail to a project that you're working on. So you guys have seen me use them a bunch in a ton of different builds, and that's it. That's just, you're just adding something, a small part to something that gives it a little more detail. I've used all kinds of stuff, obviously, so let's start getting into it. First off, I'm going to clear some of this off because it's a little busy. What do I want to talk about first? Not that. Not those. Yeah, let's start with that. All right, move this stuff out of the way too. Don't fall off the side. Okay. All right, so when I was first starting in making, I was very excited, but I think the hardest thing that I had, one of the hardest things for me to grasp was Greeblies, and it was because I had to kind of develop an eye for Greeblies, and it took me a while, but then I finally realized that what you're looking at is shapes. It's hard to look at something from the hardware store, let's say, like this. Off the shelf, this was blue. This is a electrical box that I got from Home Depot or Lowe's, something like that. When you're just looking at this at the store, it's hard to see past what its actual purpose is. When you know what something's purpose is, it can be hard to look at it and think of how you can use it for another purpose, just to look like something else or build off of it, whatever you want to do. That could be kind of hard to do, and it took me some time to kind of develop that. What I eventually got out of it is you're looking for shapes. You're looking for interesting shapes. The electrical boxes are great. I obviously hit this with a coat of silver spray paint, and this already looks like some kind of some kind of little box that you might find on the side of a Star Wars wall, inside of a cockpit. This has endless uses. You can drill into this and have things coming out of it. Electrical boxes are awesome, and if I made more larger scale props, I would use a lot more of these. I keep a couple around for when I do, but I don't get to do builds like that often, but that's okay. So yeah, you want to look for shapes because a lot of times you're going to be painting over these things anyway. So it doesn't matter what it really looks like right there. A lot of times, especially with the next thing I want to talk about from the hardware store, is PVC pipe. This stuff I use all the time, and I keep a good stash of it. This, just like the electrical box, I have hit with a coat of silver paint, and it just kind of shows you that this immediately doesn't automatically. I also put a cap on the end of it. I'm sure I had some kind of plan for this and ended up not using it, so it's just kind of hanging around waiting for something. But this just goes to show you that something as simple as a coat of paint can take this from just being a white PVC pipe to being some piping in the background of a spaceship or something. The PVC pipe is wonderful. It cuts fairly easily if you have any kind of saw. I oftentimes will not even bother firing up the table saw for cutting these. I'll just bust out my hand saw because it's just kind of a lot of work. I don't want to deal with all the mess from the table saw. So sometimes I'll just hand cut it, and that works out fine. You could also pick up actual pipe cutters, and those work great too. But yeah, so I will usually keep a stack of a couple different diameters of PVC pipe. I also really enjoy the piping for sprinkler systems. It's usually in a different area, but not very far away from where the PVC pipe is in hardware stores. But they're just a little smaller diameter. They come in smaller sections, and a lot of them already have threading on both sides, so that comes in handy a lot. Even if you aren't working on something that's big enough to where you really need to work with anything like this, PVC fittings are some of the most interesting shapes you can find at a hardware store. This is some kind of connector. I don't even know what kind of connector this is, but this is some kind of connector for PVC pipe that I painted. Again, most of this stuff I had a plan for and ended up not using, so they're all kind of in varying stages of painting, but this has been hit with some silver paint. But this is just I haven't modified this in any way other than just giving it a coat of paint, and it looks interesting. This can be some kind of connector from the box into something else over here. Who knows? My point is, PVC section of the hardware store is, don't sleep on that. It's a great place. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about briefly on hardware store stuff is, like I said, for the most part, you're going to be painting over stuff. But when you can find things like this that have a beautiful metallic finish, this is actually brass that's been, I'm sure, chrome plated on the outside, but nonetheless, this has a beautiful real metal finish, and that is something that's very hard to replicate. I've talked about this I don't know how many times, but metal finishes are really hard to replicate, and so if you can find something that already has it on there, don't mess that up. And if you have a little chunk like this that you didn't use for your build, do not throw it away. This is a leftover from my lightsaber build. Again, I'll have the link up here. It was a pretty fun build, but this is just a scrap piece left over from where I cut off the rest of this, and I already used one. I had another chunk just like this. I used that already, and I'm not throwing this away because that's a beautiful finish. Needless to say, the hardware store is a great place. You can go through there and just walk up and down every aisle and see just what all there is. Just look for shapes. Sometimes if I'm bored or if I'm looking for inspiration for a build, I'll just go to the hardware store and start walking up and down aisles, just looking at shapes, seeing what I can find. All right, so, well, I guess all of these are kind of related. So, well, you know what, I'll go ahead and talk about, I'll go ahead and talk about these before the other stuff, because it's kind of the same thing, but a little different. So, I'm sure I've mentioned to you guys before that a very common place to find Greeblies is model kits. But that's kind of a slow way to accumulate, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's kind of a slow way to accumulate Greeblies. You gotta buy a couple kits before you can really start to get a variation of pieces that you can pull from. So sometimes you can get really lucky and either on eBay or there's a wonderful website called the RPF. I will have it linked down in the description. There's a marketplace on there, and let me just go ahead and show you guys. These, not that one. These two giant freezer bags of Greeblies and these two smaller ones I bought off of a member of the RPF, and I'm sorry I don't remember your name, but you're amazing. All of these are cast pieces of actual model kits, most of which were the same kits that Star Wars model makers over at ILM actually pulled from for a lot of the models that they made for the movies. So these are beautifully casted, and this is probably about 2 pounds of Greeblies, and I didn't pay a lot for these. I don't remember how much, but it was not a lot. And so what he did was he went out and collected a bunch of the original model kits that ILM used to pull Greeblies from, and made molds of a bunch of the Greeblies, and then made them available to other makers on the RPF so that they could have access to these, because those model kits are running dry. A lot of them are vintage kits that aren't made anymore, and they're in high demand because everyone wants these Greeblies. So if you can find a run that someone is doing of something like this, jump on it. You will not regret it. I got these probably over a year ago, and as you can see, I haven't made a dent in these, and I do pull from these bags heavily. So the RPF is a great place. They have all kinds of cool stuff on their cargo hold, but if you can find someone that's doing a run of Greeblies, jump on it really quick. The other place, this is a very similar story, and I've actually already kind of used up a bunch of these Greeblies, but these are also a bunch of random Greeblies from a bunch of random model kits. And let me just grab a handful. So, oh my gosh, there's some tiny ones in here. So, these are random. And I'm pretty sure, I know that I got these from a seller on eBay. I think he was another model maker that had just amassed a bunch of kits over the years and decided to start downsizing a little bit and get rid of some stuff. So I bought this giant bag, and I've actually whittled this down quite a bit. This was just about full when I got it, and as you can see, this very dirty Ziploc bag is nearly empty now. It's whittled down to some really tiny pieces. But my point here is you can go onto eBay, RPF, I'm sure there's some other websites, and just search Greeblies, and you'll be surprised at how much stuff pops up. That is one area where it can be kind of annoying, the difference between Greeblies, greebles, the different spellings of things, because you might search Greeblies and nothing comes up. And then you search greebles and you have 5 pages of results. It all just kind of, and sometimes it's the opposite. It just kind of depends on whoever's selling their stuff at the moment. And these are kind of dusty. All right, so yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about these. This is, well, one of these is actually something that the Smuggler's Room turned me on to, and that is these hardware store, or no, I'm sorry, not hardware store. What am I talking about? These are hard drive motors, and they come in all kinds of, I have some different ones here. They come in all kinds of different sizes and shape variations, all kinds of stuff. Again, I got these on eBay. A whole big bag of a bunch of different hardware motors. These are wonderful for Greeblies, and I use in just about every life-size prop that I make. One of these is on there. I have one on Adonis over here, my astromech droid. I have one on the side of my camera cart, one on the side of the Mandalorian box. You guys probably can't see it in frame, but it's there. I use these all the time on life-size props because they look so much like something that you would see in Star Wars, and they're a small enough size to where this is believable as some kind of knob, and all of them actually like spin and turn. It's probably hard for you to see, but this middle section actually spins around. So it's a cool way to add a little bit of actual functionality to like a control panel or something like that. These are awesome, and like I said, I found this big bag on eBay. I'm pretty sure it was like 20 bucks. Most of these are just scrap. And that brings us into the next thing. Oftentimes, I will go to eBay and just search scrap or spare parts and stuff like that, because sometimes you'll see this is another fairly big bag. It's not very full, but it's full of all of these, to be honest, I don't even know what these are. They're some kind of like arm for some kind of mechanical or electronic purpose. They all have these little connectors on here, so I'm sure it's connected to some kind of electronics normally, but they're these little interesting arms, and they have a little pivot point in the middle that allows it to turn. And I've used these a couple of times. I'll be honest, I haven't, see, here's a different one. This one's much wider and a little more narrow this way, but it's the same basic design. But I haven't found a bunch of excuses to use these yet, but when I have, they're really cool, and these are just a really interesting shape that is not easily identifiable by most people. So these are an example of a really cool Greebly, and I'm sure that I'll be picking out of this bag for years, and I might not touch it for a while, but when I do, I'm always glad that I have it, because these things are just so different. Like, I don't even know what this is. This doesn't look like anything else in there, but it's a pretty cool shape, and it's metal, so it already has a nice finish on there. That's wonderful. I love stuff like that. This is a casting of a 3D print I did. That's right. If you have a specific Greebly that you're looking for and you can't seem to find an easy way to fabricate it, or you know, find something that looks similar to it that you can modify into it, you can just design it and print it out. This is a casting of a 3D print, but I went and 3D printed a handful of Greeblies that I really liked the shape of, and I knew that I was going to be using often, and I made molds of them so that I can cast them up whenever I want. And this is one of them. I'm sure you've seen me use this a couple of times. This is on Adonis. This is on the camera card, the Mandalorian box, and even my moisture evaporator. This I use all the time, and I knew I was going to, so I made a mold of it and casted it. So I highly suggest, if you guys have a Greebly that you really, really enjoy, and you know that you're going to be using a lot, just make a mold of it and cast up a couple so you can just have them ready to go. About once a month I'll go and just cast up a good 5 or 10 of these just so that they're ready to go whenever I need them. And you can paint them differently however you want. I actually usually end up painting this about the same every time, but if you wanted to, you could paint this differently and have 2 of them on the same piece, and because they're painted differently, you don't immediately notice, oh, that's the same thing as over there. So you can get a lot of one Greebly can be very versatile in a single build if you have a couple of them. There's a couple different ways you can disguise it. You can paint it different, give it a different finish. But this also kind of speaks to a lot of times when I find a really nice Greebly that I really like, I have a hard time using it because I'm always hanging on to it in case there's another build later that it's better suited for, and I don't want to lose it. In that scenario, that is a time to just make a mold of it and cast up a couple, because that's probably something that you're going to be using a couple times. Now, let's talk, kind of already mentioned this a little bit, but let's talk about model kits. This is the extent of my collection right now. I've actually let it dwindle quite a bit. I've been using up a lot and not replacing. So what I typically like to do is I'll go to, like once a month, I'll go to my local model shop and just pick up a couple cheap ones. Doesn't even necessarily have to be something that you want to actually build. I tend to grab a lot of little tank kits. As you can see, right now I have mostly tank kits. I have 4 tank kits. Doesn't really matter which ones. I just kind of tend to like the Greeblies that I get out of those. And then a couple actual Bondi Star Wars kits that I will sparingly grab from. I feel like it's kind of a crutch grabbing from these, but I mean, look at all of these wonderful, wonderful shapes in there. A lot of them come with little people. I don't use the people a lot, but they can be kind of nice if you're trying to think about scale. It can kind of help you out a little bit if you're building something close to that scale. But I mean, these are just full of wonderful, wonderful Greeblies. That's from the ATST kit. But let me show you some of the pieces from some of these tank kits. I'll grab out one of these Tamiya kits. Oh, this is why I love tank kits. Look at all these wheels. The wheels in tank kits, I love. I do not want to be without a bunch of these. They're wonderful, wonderful things. But there's all kinds of shapes in here. And it looks like I already took out some of the bigger ones. But a lot of times, let me see if I can find one for you guys. A lot of times these tank kits will come with, come on. A lot of times these tank kits will come with bigger pieces no, took them out of there too. Man, I really need to go get some more kits. Okay, here's one. It's a little smaller than I'm used to, but so tank kits will usually come with a couple bigger pieces for the hull of the tank, and these are wonderful for these are kind of smaller than the ones I'll typically go for, but these are really nice for basing a shape off of. So if you're wanting to build a spaceship and you aren't quite sure what shape you want to work with, I will oftentimes, that's probably why these are bare of all of their bigger pieces, I'll go in and just grab one of the bigger pieces and start working off of that as the base. Something like this I could totally see as like a control bridge on the top of a spaceship. So stuff like that. Everything from the smaller pieces to the bigger ones in these kits are so useful, and I have kind of let my collection slip a little bit. So I will be needing to make a trip to the model shop quite soon. Now, I'm going to finish this video off with a time lapse of me harvesting Greeblies from something. But before I get into that, let's talk about storing Greeblies. Now, I don't have a one-size-fits-all answer to storing Greeblies, and I really need to pay some more attention to that, which is something I'm going to be getting into in the next shop. But for right now, I have these bags and then a couple of these sorters, and these sorters are really nice because you can start to kind of organize them by shape or type. So as you can see on this side of this sorter, I have some wheels in this one, some aircraft wings in this bigger section. This helps you to kind of organize them and keep them all in the same spot. This is a nice sorter because it has two sides, and of course everything on this side is black, so you guys won't be able to see it. But these are some more 3D printed Greeblies I have. These are a bunch of pieces to the Jedi training remote, which I need to do a show and tell for. But these are just a bunch of nice little Greeblies that were printed off, and these sorters are really nice for organizing them. What I really need to do is grab a couple more of these sorters and go through these bags and sort some of them out, because sometimes it's just kind of a luck of a draw whenever you're going into the bag. It's hard to see everything in there. This one is really nice because it has removable little boxes, little sections that way if you know you're going to be using a lot of a certain type of shape, you can just grab that box and bring it over to wherever you're working with, and you don't have to worry about this big thing. These are I have a whole container of these little lenses that I salvaged from, you know, those rotating disco ball things that have a bunch of these lenses all over the outside, and it's just a light in the middle and a ball that rotates around, and it throws these different colored lights around the room that spin. Well, these are the lenses from that, and I had a couple of them at one point for very old build. At this point I was changing them into something completely different, but I didn't need all of these lenses in there, so I took them out and I decided, you know what, the little lenses like these are really hard to find, so I've held on to them, and I've actually probably been holding on to a lot of these for a while, but like I said, when I need them, I am glad I have them. One of them is this part right here on Adonis, this little lens here. And I don't have the LEDs on right now, but they work very well when you do find a use for them. So now that I have taken you guys through some of my favorite Greeblies and where I go to find my Greeblies, let's talk about the last one. This is probably one of my favorite ways to happen upon Greeblies, and for that, we're going to be taking a look at this. I like to call this scavenging for Greeblies. Along with going to the model shop about once a month, I'll go to a couple Goodwills and thrift stores like once a month and just look for old electronics, old cameras, projectors, and that is what this is. This is an old projector that I have yet to take apart, and see, this still has the Goodwill sticker on it. I paid $7 for this. $7 for this giant projector. Look at this. It has a beautiful lens on this side, all of these wonderful knobs and buttons and all kinds of wonderful things. So I'm so excited to get into this. So I am going to crack into this, and yeah, that's how we'll finish up this video. So, like I said, there will not be a build video for probably a couple more weeks. Like I'm guessing about 2 or 3. It could be less, it could be more. I'm trying to get that shop, the new shop, up and running as quickly as possible. But I still want to be putting out content for you guys. So I figured I would use this time to go a little more in depth on some stuff. And like I said, Greeblies is something I've been getting a lot of questions about, so I figured I would go a little more in depth about it. If you guys have anything that you want to, anything you want to go more in depth about, or any questions or anything like that, let me know in the comments. I'll be checking those out, because really this is about you guys. Like, this is about me trying to help you guys develop as makers. But as always, thank you guys for all of your support. Make sure you hit the subscribe and the bell button, and let's start taking this apart. Look at you guys watching all the way through the video. That was supposed to be the end of the video, but for those of you who stuck around, I'm going to show you some of the cool stuff that I got out of this projector. Obviously, I made a mess, and I'm going to take care of that after we're done. But first off, I got this giant lens that I'll probably take apart, because there's a smaller section inside here that actually holds the lens, and I don't need this big tube, so I'll probably get rid of that. But look at these lenses are incredible. They're giant. This one is just ginormous. I don't know what I'm going to use this for, but I'm definitely not throwing it away. And this one is also pretty unique. It's a little concave on the back. It's not quite straight. Those are lovely. I got a bunch of little knobbies off of here, and let's see what else. Some different shapes of this is actually metal. Yeah, there were some good stuff in here. There's a bunch of buttons and stuff that I'm still going to take off, but I think you guys earned that that little show of what I got out of here. Oh, and this really cool bulb. Definitely doesn't work anymore, but I'm sure I can find a use for this somewhere. But thank you guys for sticking around. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.